Hi, Dolphins. This is Lisa Sewell. I'm here today with Alex Lopez, Senior Design Manager for Microsoft. Alex graduated from CSUCI in 2014 with a degree in psychology and has worked in user experience for more than a decade, serving companies like Warner Music Group and Ricoh Technologies. Alex, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Well, let's just jump right in. So can you tell us a little bit more about your current role as a Senior Design Manager?
Yeah. So senior design manager, I oversee two things. One, people management. So I oversee a team of designers and researchers. We work in search. And so artificial intelligence and search, specifically in business technology. So helping organizations basically find things within their organization better. Like if you were to think about it, we want search to be as easy as it is searching online, searching in Google or Bing or, other places.
Got it. Great. So what do you like best about the work that you do, and what do you find maybe the most challenging?
Yeah. So what's best is, well, one, working at Microsoft, like there's no lack of inspiration, and there's also no lack of imposter syndrome. As you grow in your career, you learn more, and then you learn that you know a lot less than you do.
Yeah.
And so it's one, I just love the environment of learning, just working with researchers and working with designers such as Bill Buxton, like some of the legends of design and research and engineering, being able to do that. The particular work that I do, actually psychology is pretty interwoven day to day there. Although I'm on the design side, I work very closely with my researchers, and having the education and background in psychology has really helped me understand when we run analyses, when we run flighting, which is basically little experiments, across millions of users and getting back data and understanding that, as well as, all of the traditional methods of research that we studied. So having a background and knowledge of that has really helped me. But being able to work in the search space, search is a very psychologically driven space. It seems very simple, actually. There's a search box, you type something, you get answers. But there's just so much psychology behind why we search, what we look for, the intents of searching, what we're thinking about beforehand, what happens after, right? You have to really be in tune with people's basic needs, which is pretty infrastructural, right? So a common statistic is, people spend about 20% of their day looking for stuff, right? It could be on computer, it could be pulling up a quick fact, right? It could be yelling at your Alexa and trying to get an answer, but search happens all the time and it's so invisible, right? It's something I call like an essential utility, right? It's much like walking in and flicking a light on. Like you expect it to work and you need it to work for a task, right? And so it's both something so simple and so complex. And that's for me, being interested in design, in culture, in art, in philosophy, it's like that sweet spot, right? Most challenging, I touched on a few things, but just the constant, I love learning, but the constant need to learn and to keep up, right? You definitely have to have an interest in the spaces that you work in, which is, I guess, common for any area, that you would work. But it's a very complex space. And so there's a lot you don't know. And there's I guess it's you learn to embrace failure, and failure is a part of learning, right? But that's never easy. Even when people support you in that, nobody likes to fail, right? But from I have two children, and from them failing and learning to me failing and learning, you learn that's just a part of life, but it never gets any easier, right? So that's challenging, especially when you're making big bets on certain investments in a space, or using a lot of people's time and energy to build something, right? That's obviously like very challenging.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up because you
Yeah,
mentioned failure and then you also mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, which I
yeah,
appreciate. And I think that's something that all of us experience at some point
totally.
in careers, but I'm really glad that you mentioned it. Is there anything that you've been able to do kind of throughout your career to help you just sort of, deal with that and push forward? Because
Yeah.
obviously it hasn't stopped you, but it's still
Yep.
something that you're aware of. And I know our students and our alumni are going to face as well.
Yep. Yeah. Some common tactics, I guess you'd say, is like be upfront. If you don't know something, like you don't have to pretend you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's I guess it's built into the culture at Microsoft, but we use so many things like acronyms, like just the language gets so complex. And so just generally speaking, our training is like, if you don't know something, just raise your hand and say, like, what are you talking about there? I don't understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that definitely helps. Being in a culture that values learning definitely helps as well. But some like personal things is just being interested in whatever you're pursuing, right? I mean, your dream and your career don't always match up. And so I think sometimes that's a hard expectation to have. And even when you reach that, at the end of the day, it's a job, right? I mean, there's different ways to look at life, and for me, it's I have a family and friends and a network of people who love and care about me, and so that's where I like to invest my time and energy. I'm also very interested in making life better for people, which is why I love designing. But realizing, that it's okay not to know things, right? It's yeah, I'm reminded of kind of like a visual of, it's like what you think other people know, and it's like a big bubble, and you've got a little bubble, and then there's what and what other people know, and all these little bubbles are touching each other, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think that's sort of the beauty, one, in humanity, and then two, just in working with others, right? It's a collective knowledge, right? And
Yeah.
so having a healthy environment to do that obviously is really beneficial. And I'm really thankful, in the group that I work in at Microsoft, there's so much that's unknown. It's just everybody relies on that and their knowledge, and it always seems to work out. But yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, I'm rambling, but those are just some bits of knowledge I picked up over time.
Yeah, thank you. And it
Yeah,
sounds like Microsoft really fosters, like you saying, this love for learning and this just
yeah,
continuous, like everybody who's there, it sounds like has probably got this like curiosity and
totally.
just wanting to soak up information. So for you, I guess, what would you say are maybe some of the top 2 or 3 skills that you see as being common across, employees in your area that you think are really critical to do the work that you do?
Yeah. Um, so, across all disciplines, one, you have to care about people. I think technology, it's a double-edged sword, right? I mean, there's sometimes we tool on ideas, and we strike, hey, this is a really cool thing, and it gets picked up and used in a bunch of places. But unless you're really caring about and being intentional about the products you're designing, the impacts they have, um, you see things that pop up, across time and across events, that are really negative, right? And have massive impacts either on things like elections or how we see each other, how we treat our friends and family digitally, right? And so one of the things is like you have to really care about people. And some of these almost seem cliche, but as I look back, I'm like, wow, you know what? These are actually really true. Like you have to care about people. You have to want to grow. Like you have to admit that you don't know and want to grow, right? For me, it's like I'm a lifelong learner, and I've always been interested in new things, and that's probably brought me to where I am, now. And thankfully, none of those have led me too far astray. But that desire of learning and the recognition that you don't know a lot,
Mhm.
that's something that I notice amongst my peers, right? Uh, and then I'd say another one, well, I guess I'll say two more. Um, you have to be dedicated to that work, right? You have to be really interested in it, right? You can't just be good at it, I guess, because that takes you only so far. You'll either run out of steam, you'll burn out, you'll get disinterested, right? And then and I think that's probably a common part of learning about what your passions are and where you feel like you invest your time. And I think that grows with time and experience, which is wisdom, right? And so, but I think having a good idea of that early on, knowing like I just got to get a job and I got to get paid well and stuff like that. It only goes so far. Money can only make you so happy, right?
Well, that's such good advice. And I wanted to actually transition to thinking about our students or alumni who are going to be watching this and might be like, okay, that's the type of work I want to do. Everything you're saying really resonates with me. So I wanted to go back. You've been in this field now since 2002.
Yeah.
So I was
probably a
curious,
little earlier.
even earlier than
I
that.
started in high school, just designing. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask is how did you get started and what advice would you have for somebody who's kind of break into a similar path as yours?
Yeah. So probably no like epic story. It was just I came from born and raised in California, just recently, well, I guess recently, 4 years now, I've been in Washington, but grew up in a middle-class family, had some opportunities, but not a bunch, but it was just more of my interest in art and technology. And my mom so happened to have a computer that I could do design stuff on, right? Or art stuff. And so that started at a young age, but then getting into, I played in bands and stuff. And since I had a computer, or I borrowed one and a copy of Photoshop, I was the token, designer at that point, where I had to make stickers and t-shirts and stuff. So it just started from a passion early on, and kind of, I don't want to say fell in my lap, because I was definitely interested in it. But from there, seeing my parents and the things that they did, I had, I guess, a little bit of an entrepreneurial, stint. So I started doing design work and getting hired to do things, from people. I worked for nonprofits and churches, and my community was a really great place for me to learn. So I just tried to pick up on any opportunity I had to do those things that were interesting to me, right? Be it, in a church service, changing slides for the pastor, or, doing big events, concerts and stuff. It was just kind of like, I just took every opportunity that came to me.
So would you say that you are primarily self-taught in your field, or?
Yeah, actually, my college tenure was interesting. So out of high school, I did school out of high school on and off, because I kind of, I guess it was like reverse, just a different way of doing it, which I think it just worked out for me. But initially, coming out of high school, like, you don't really, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew the things that I didn't know I could make money doing them. And so I went into English at first. I hopped around schools, like the CSUCI. I did the weekend school, at SBCC. I think that's what it's called. Forgetting all the acronyms, it's been a while. But I finished my school on the weekends, and I was married. I had my first child. It was really hard, but I think, I went to like 5-6 schools. So it wasn't like, hey, I knew what I wanted, went 4 years, got out. No, I didn't. But I think all of those things, there was a dedication, there was a trajectory, at least. And it all stayed in the same place, and life happened. And I think having grace for that, that concept, and but also still having dedication, right, to investing in yourself and investing in where you want to go. Like that's what led me to where I am today. And it was definitely like one of those, comic strips where like the person's walking all over the place, but I finally found where I wanted to be. And it's funny because like I said, I pursued a lot of these different, either vocational, or I went from English to writing to communications to design for a little bit, and just didn't really find a fit. And wound up in psychology, because what I really actually wanted was a base to build on, right? And so I felt like psychology or philosophy, or things of that nature that were appealing to me, were a good base. And so, and it worked, like I said, it gave me a lot of great training, both vocational and academic training, to apply to the work I do each day.
Yeah. It's really interesting hearing your path, because I think when most people think of a psychology major, they wouldn't necessarily think of where the job that you have at Microsoft as a pathway. So it might seem a little bit non-traditional, but the way that you were describing kind of testing out all these different things is really, I mean, the most common. I mean, that's how for many of us, we figure out where we want to end up. I really appreciate hearing your journey. And along the concept of lifelong learning, I did see on your LinkedIn profile that you had gotten this design leadership credential. And I know that's becoming very common, is kind of after getting a bachelor's degree, is kind of going on and then specializing in these sort of like certificate or credential programs. And so I'd love to hear more about that, kind of what prompted you to kind of continue this process, and how has it benefited you so far?
So one of the cool things is like Microsoft really believes in furthering education. And so there's a bunch of programs that they have. And so this particular one, for me, it was really looking at, and it was just a week-long program. But what was great was I got to sit and talk with and learn with, a bunch of people in the industry. And so people like me were going to learn more about design leadership and have a kind of a structured approach to be able to apply that learning and work with others and learn from them as well. So I mean, one of the reasons was it was afforded to me by Microsoft to go do it. That definitely helped. But just continuing to focus in on certain areas where I want like self-improvement, in that particular phase, going from managing a small team to a much larger team. So one of the things, you have to do people management and product management at the same time. And so you have to really learn how to scale yourself, which is actually, you had a question on, some great advice, and my current boss and friend for a long time was, one of the things he's been driving is like, you got to really figure out as you grow in your career, how you scale yourself, right? You can't do all the things all the time. You have to learn to build trust and invest in people. But back to this credential from Cooper really, it put me in a room with like-minded people. And everybody had a little bit of wisdom and knowledge. And then we've got this, extra application of academic, structured learning that really helped. It was a really good experience.
So I wanted to end on really just a question that I like to ask everybody. I like to end on a positive tone. So what has inspired you lately?
Oh, wow. There's so much to be inspired about, especially after the year we've had. I mean, just thinking of right now, today, just the inauguration of our new president, and not only our new president, but our new Madam Vice President. The impact that that's going to have on future generations, I think, is massive, right? And so it's weird, like growing up and almost having a label applied to you. I'm a person of color, right? But just seeing how that has impacted my life and had shaped me in ways that I'm still even learning about. I think just seeing that happen today was a really amazing thing. So, I guess it's a bit cheating, but that was one thing that's inspired me just today. But then again, looking again over the past year, just the ingenuity of people in their desire to continue community, to continue growth and connection. And it's not like, obviously everybody understands this. It's not easy still, and it's not great also. But just to see the networks that have come out of that, and the areas or the lines of support, either for me at work, or, at home, or, me moving into a new community during a pandemic and still somehow feeling a sense of community. Those things have been really inspiring. So I mean, there's technological advancements and stuff, but for me, it's like people and things that people do that inspire me.
Yeah. Well, I would have to agree. I'm feeling inspired right now too. And definitely by your advice, I think I know our students and our alumni are going to really appreciate your words of wisdom. So I just want to thank you for
Yeah,
being part of this pod talk and
absolutely.
sharing your journey with fellow dolphins.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Appreciate it. Yeah, and go Dolphins.
Go Dolphins.